Welcome to the Successfully Unemployed Show. My name is Dustin Heiner, and I'm here to help you learn how to quit that JOB, that just over broke job, by investing, by having a side hustle, by being an entrepreneur, or a TikTok and Instagram star. And I have brought on a fantastic expert who is literally exploding on social media. And he's also even teaching other business owners, how to utilize social media to expand their reach, expand their growth, and to reach more people. I have Mike Draper on with me. Mike, thank you so much for being on the show.
What's going on, Dustin? Thanks for having me here. Honestly, I'm super excited for this. This is a topic I love talking about, real estate. I don't get to do it a ton with my social media niche that I'm currently in, but so thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's fun seeing what you do with social media, because I follow you on social media and I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, how in the world do you utilize this? Like you're so creative, but like I'm looking at, man, I don't want to take the time to, anyways, we can get into that later, but I want to ask, how do you provide for yourself and your family without working that dead end job?
Yeah, great question. So how I do that, it's your podcast, right? So real estate is how I do it. So mine specifically is single family residential real estate, and really what's driving the most income, because that's what provides for my family, is the monthly income is short-term rentals. So I have 2 Airbnbs that I have. I have a third that's in the middle of getting rehabbed. But those 2 listings I have, it's actually one property. It's like 3,800 square feet in total living square footage. It's a main house plus an ADU. It's like 5-bed, 3-bath, 2,700 square foot, like regular suburban home, like pretty big home. It's like 1920s. It's pretty old. So it's like all kind of funky layout, but nonetheless, and a 3-bed, 1-bath, 1,100 square foot ADU, 2 separate listings. They're in a Portland metro city out of Portland, Oregon, and they cash flow numbers that I live on. So that's the main way I've been able to quit a day job is short-term rentals. And then I have 2 other long-term rentals, which one's in Pennsylvania and it cash flows like $270 or $80 a month, something like that. And then the one in the same city here in Portland Metro, I think it cash flows about $450 or $500 a month as a long-term rental. Property managers for the long-term rentals, and I manage the short-term rental.
That is, I love that. I love that you're doing. Now, when I say long-term, when I talk, this is what I do. People ask me, what do you do? And I'm an investor. I invest in long-term properties. Now, people automatically, and it's okay, they automatically think of like long-term tenants, which are great. I love long-term tenants. What I'm more mean, I probably should start saying this instead, is I am buy and hold. So I would either rent it long-term, year leases, midterm, which would be like traveling the nurses, and they go for 6 months or something like that, but they're in and out. Or short-term, which is Airbnb. But I love the buy and hold method because that's actually investing. You're investing in an asset that's making you money. So I love the idea of doing short-term rental property. So what were you doing before this, before you started really getting into real estate and start realizing that, man, you could actually become successfully unemployed with this? But what were you doing before, and what got you really into it, and all the nervousness and anxiousness about quitting and being just solely in your real estate investing?
Yeah, I'll answer that real quick because I wanted to make sure I didn't forget. I want to touch on, you said like buying long-term, or buying and holding long-term, right? So like the current property that I'm renovating right now, I bought with 100% of the money that I got from a refinance from my other rental from the appreciation. So I had just enough money to like squeak by and get this one rental property. And I had it for like 26 months during the right time, which was just, which is luck and hanging on to it, not like just hanging on to it, knowing that like stay with the process. And then like it appreciated enough to where I could refinance, take out that money, and I'm able to buy another property and have money left over, all the things. So like to me, it's like infinite return because I'm buying something with money I didn't have that was just like, I didn't have to like save for my paycheck or my monthly income. I just head over here and I just keep it over there in real estate. So
I'll add one thing to that too, because if you did work your tail off to make that much money, you're going to have to make more than that because you're going to be taxed on it. When you actually pulled that money out, that's a tax-free loan. The government doesn't look at loans as taxable, but your income, when you make money, you're penalized for making money. But if you borrow money to make somebody else, like the bank money, you're not penalized for that, which is fantastic. So we get access to the equity to buy another property that makes us even more money. So I love it.
Yeah, it's such a fantastic game, the game of real estate and just society, the world, life. Anyways, so I love it. So what was I doing prior to real estate? So before this, so I was a police officer for 5.5 years in Hillsboro, Oregon. So I did that for 5 years. I was also investing in real estate in the middle of that. So like before that, I was in the military, I was in the Air Force for 6 years. Was in Texas, Nebraska, England, Africa, and then came back to good old Portland, Oregon. So when I was in the military, I bought my first house that I lived in, right? A primary residence. And but I did buy it with the intention of like, quote unquote, flipping it. So at the time I was watching like HGTV. Really what got the fire under my butt was watching Scott McGillivray on Income Property. I don't know if you remember that show.
I do. That was a fun show to watch.
Yeah. So I loved the idea. I mean, I was 18, 19 watching that, and I bought my first house at 20 in Nebraska, and it was a foreclosure, and there was like, dog urine everywhere, like ruined it. Just gross, right? All cosmetic fixes looking back at it, but like just gross. And so I remember watching that Income Property show, and the idea of like, hey, you have this basement down here. Oh, cool. Storage for blankets and basketballs. It's like, no, let's spend some money. Let's do some DIY and make it a living space. And then you rent it out for $1,200 or whatever it was. And so to me, that was like money making without having to do much. Do like one project, one assignment, one like homework assignment was how my brain was thinking. And then you're done, quote unquote, forever, right? There's still some maintenance things there, but that got the fire under my first few paychecks were like $440 after taxes, $515, like that, right?
Well, you're not making much when you're working for somebody else. I mean, especially if you look at how much you make with your short-term rental properties. You built your own business. You have your own value that you put into it, as opposed to waiting for somebody else or having somebody else pay you for your time. You work an hour, then you get paid that hour. That's just, man, that's for the birds. We don't want to do that. So You then went into, from making money, saving money, you started buying properties. Now, if somebody were to get into their first short-term rental property, which obviously, and I just went over that, it's buy and hold. We're holding on to these properties. And the longer you hold on to them, the more rents go up, the more equity you have. You can cash out, refinance, pull that cash out to buy something else. We can do all of that. So if somebody were to get started, what would you suggest should they become a realtor? Should they become a wholesaler? Should they flip properties? What would you suggest for somebody to get into short-term rental properties?
Yes, great question. So got to look at where you're at currently. Take a self-inventory, a self-audit of where are you financially, where are you skill set wise, and then what do you desire? What do you want? Is it the cash flow? Is it the net worth? Because some people want like the bigger number. I've learned over time that I love cash flow. Like I couldn't care less about like my net worth. That it's just sitting there like cool. For me, like what affects my day-to-day living is how much cash I have continually coming in, right? And so, I'm a single dad. And so I really value doing things with my daughter, experiences, just having quality stuff, nothing like over the top, just having stuff. And so cash flow for me is huge. So if someone was asking, hey, how do I start in short-term rentals? Do that. Look where you're at financially. Look where you're at skill wise, and then what do you want to get from short-term rentals? And so the easiest way, you live somewhere, right? I hope someone's living somewhere, unless you're homeless and you listen to this podcast, it's possible. But like you're living somewhere, you might have a spare bedroom, or you're able to squeeze into one room if you have a partner or whatever the case is, right? There was a time for here, I'm in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo, 910 square feet. I have a 1-car attached garage, which is where I'm at right now. If I turn this camera, there's a trampoline and there's like gymnastics equipment and like curtains over the garage door.
I love it.
It's my studio. It's my studio, and rent out that spare bedroom. If you feel comfortable, right? You got to take an inventory again of like what your risk tolerance, what you're comfortable with doing. But if your desire to get into short-term rentals and have cash flow, passive cash flow, to get you to quit your 9 to 5, my desire for that was so much higher than a lot of other like things that I'm willing to sacrifice. Right. So am I willing to have someone, quote unquote, a stranger in here, to do it? My answer was yes to that decision. Your answer might be no. That's fine. But that's the first place with the lowest barrier to entry to get into short-term rentals. Rent out space in your current living situation if you can. If not, can you go from a 1-bedroom apartment that you're living in to a 2-bedroom? It goes from $1,300 a month rent to $1,700 in your complex maybe. Can you make more than $400 a month from short-term rental in a spare bedroom? I'll tell you unequivocally, yes, you can. I've done it numerous times, months on end. I've rented to travel nurses. That was my best tenant for 61 days. I had her, and she ended up paying, because like the market rate of what was set by, I use pricelabs.com to set my pricing for my Airbnbs. It's a dynamic pricing calculator, just same as like how Uber has surge pricing, same idea. And she ended up paying an average, I think, of like $1,700 a month, $1,720 per month times 61 days. And it was like, she's like, yep, that's what was available in the Portland metro area at the time for a shared bedroom this close to hospitals, blah, blah, blah. So for 61 days, I got $3,500, something like that is what it was. That's a win for me. Like,
that
right?
Sure is.
So that's the first place I would start would be there. If you don't like having someone in your home, which I understand, rental arbitrage is a great one. I have not done it, so I won't tell you that I've done it, but I follow some people who do it. And having rented out this place, my spare bedroom, having rented out full homes for short-term rentals, oh yes, it is there. It is possible. You rent and you can do this in any city, any HOA, anything, because you're not having to follow the short-term rental laws, right? Because you're not doing a short-term rental. So I'm talking about midterm rentals here, is a great way to bypass the stress of applying for permits, applying for whatever for short-term rentals, because a lot of cities and governments are regulating pretty heavy on them, understandably, I suppose. And so the way to bypass that while still getting your feet into short-term rentals, into Airbnbs, into furnished rentals is really what it is. Into furnished rentals, go the midterm route, 30 days or longer. There's plenty of demand for that. There really is. And pick a city that would have that demand. Lots of hospitals and business travel, right? So like the major cities, Dallas, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, San Diego, LA, like the big ones. And just run the math. How much does it cost for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, 600 square foot apartment? Oh, it's $2,300. Okay. What's the cost to furnish it? For a 1-bedroom, it's going to cost you $6,000 to $9,000 to furnish that thing to a nicer level, right? You want sturdy stuff, good design, nice wallpaper. You want your photos to stand out on Airbnb, so you get a higher click rate and then you get a higher conversion on all those things to get more bookings. And then you got to have first month's rent and security deposit, right? So you're going to need 10, 12 grand to get your first arbitrage unit. And if looking at all the ones I've seen, they're going to cash flow on the low end, 1,100 up to like 2,300 a month. And these are 30 to 90 day stays. So you have cleanings once a month, once every other month. That would be a step. Yeah.
Yeah. And doing rental arbitrage. So if for people don't know what arbitrage basically means for rental properties, you're not owning anything, but you're leasing a house. And then you are doing everything you would normally do for Airbnb or traveling nurses and stuff like that, which would be furnishing the entire thing out. So it's a long-term rental, but you're having people come in and stay at different times. And so you don't actually buy the property. The only thing you own is the furniture and the, every pictures and all that sort of stuff. So my personal opinion is that is a great way to get money to then invest, to buy your property, because we all need money in order to do this. So with that, if we were to buy our first property, would you suggest doing, like, some areas have duplexes, some areas don't? Would you suggest doing like a duplex, like that house hack where you rent out one side and live in the other? Or would you think, like, if you can go right to where you buy a property that is fully going to be all Airbnb. Like you don't live in there and it's just fully Airbnb. Would both of them work just fine, or would one of them be better than the other?
Both work just fine. So my mind goes to, can you qualify for a primary residential home, right? If you can, I would absolutely look into multi-family, right? So 2, 3, or 4 unit homes, because it's the same low down payment. And I don't know what else you talk about on this podcast. I'm sure you've hit this before, but like it's the same low down payment. You can do the 3% down if you're a veteran, or if you're a veteran, you can do 0% down. There are some down payment assistance programs that those are very finicky, because I'm a loan officer myself as well, licensed loan officer. So there are certain qualifications, things that like 1 unit only or 2 units maybe, but like conventional 3% down, first time home buyer, or 5% down if it's your second time buying in the most recent 3 years. 2, 3, and 4 unit properties. Yes. So then once you decide, is it a primary residence? Like, am I going to move into this home and live there for at least 1 year? If the answer is yes, look at 2, 3, and 4 unit complexes. And then also look at what is the short-term rental rates for that area? That's like, is there demand for short-term rentals there? And you can do that. There's websites out there. airdna.co is what I use. What it does is it looks at, you type in your property info, so 2-bed, 1-bath for each of those 3 extra units you have on this 4-plex you're looking at buying, and you type in the address and 2 bedrooms, so 4 guests max per unit, 1 bathroom, and then it tells you what the average daily rental rate is in that area and the occupancy rate. It tells you real close to what you're going to be making, and I've checked it on my current properties, which I have a year's worth of data, and it's right there. So like for my case, it was accurate, right? So I could speak to that at least, and then just do the math. So just do the math. Like, okay, I can bring in $2,600 a month per unit times 3 units. So we're at $7,800 a month. Plus I have the mortgage of what? Now that gets, there's some details there about what I want to touch on, because to use, so if you buy so it's real short, if you're going to buy a 4 unit complex as a primary residence, the lender will look at your income, right? As a whatever W-2 employee at whatever. Okay. You have that income, you have your debt, plus you have this new proposed debt of this 4 unit complex with this proposed mortgage that we're looking at. Do you qualify with just your income? If the answer is no, then we can look at the other income that this property produces, if it's long-term traditional rentals, right? So as of right now, there's not many products, none that I could offer, where you could be like, I plan to rent out the other 3 units as short-term rentals. I'd be like, we can't use that income to qualify you. You don't qualify. So, because we can use current leases that are in place, we can use proposed leases or signed leases, or we can do a rental market analysis, or the appraiser does, and we use those numbers, and we can use that income, that potential income from a traditional long-term rental, non-furnished, to qualify you for your mortgage. What you do after, I can't control what you do after, but that is the game.
So let's say we get our first property, and I would definitely suggest getting multifamily or 4 units and below. It's still residential property. You're still getting a 30-year fixed loan, which is a fantastic way to go. And so if you were to get one of those, how do we make sure that we're going to fill it? Because that's a big concern. Now, we're not going to be talking about COVID and how everything got locked down and how horrible it was and people were having to get refunds and all that sort of stuff. But that happens. But let's say everything is going to be running fine and everything's going to be normal. How do we make sure, like right when we list it the first time, how do we make sure that we're going to be a good Airbnb, that people want to stay in there and almost pay a premium because it's a nice property, because of the reviews and all that sort of stuff?
Amenities. So look, just like how you would comp out doing flips. So if you're looking at comparables of other houses, or if you're going to look at comparables to sell your current home, what else does the market have? And the market being your immediate local area, right? So if you're in Tampa, Florida, you're going to have different amenities that should be included if you're going to reach a certain average nightly rate, right? You're going to probably need a hot tub. You're going to need like a pool table in there, air conditioning, I would hope, in certain areas. So like I'm in Portland area. Air conditioning is not necessarily gonna, you don't necessarily need it, right? That's one kind of weird amenity that most places I feel like have, or I would want, I guess that's personal, but that you don't necessarily need. So look at all the amenities that are offered in your local area, and then go look at those properties on Airbnb, and let's look at the photos, just see, and then look at their calendars, right? Do a little bit of hustle, like grind work of like, okay, this is what airdna.co says is the average nightly rate. What kind of amenities do they have? So then actually go to the websites, go to VRBO, go to home.com. It's really go to Airbnb. That's where it's all at, honestly, the majority. And so go to Airbnb and look at the actual listings that are available to rent, right? Search out, have a flexible filter on there so you can see all the properties, and then like look at their calendars. Can I reserve these dates? And you can see which ones are filled up and which ones are open. The ones that are open clearly don't have as much demand, or theoretically they could be getting demand on like VRBO website, but very likely they're just not getting demand. It'll be booked on Airbnb a lot. And then you start to realize that, okay, prices at $400 a night, their calendars are pretty open. Prices at $265 a night, they're pretty full. The ones at $265 have these types of photos and these amenities. $400 a night, they have these. You just start looking at, like, you see a pattern real quick, and you're like, okay, probably about $315 a night if I have like pool table, professional photos, king size beds, a hot tub. I mean, location is huge too, right? How close or far are you to public transit, for shopping centers, walking distance to restaurants, or not? Any answer is fine. You just have to understand where you fall. Like, your location is your location. You can't change it. So like, what else can you affect? How else can you affect the average nightly rate? What's in your control, right? And so, you look at what you have, and how you make it better is professional photos. My mindset went to like staging. Furnish the home as if you were staging it to sell it, like a flip. But then make sure those staging items are like sturdy, functional, useful things. So, and then all the details as well. Like, you don't want crappy silverware. You don't want a really crappy coffee maker. You don't need to go like all out, but like, don't get the $13 one. Get like the $35 one from Costco. Like, just make it livable, right?
I love that idea. And most people, or at least I would not think directly of amenities, making sure that there are things in there that people would want to stay. I just think, okay, they just want a bed. They're going to sleep in. But no, not everybody is like that. Most people, they're going there for a certain reason, and you need to provide it. So looking at everything else, like all the other properties in the area, see how much they're renting for and see what they're actually offering. That's a great idea, because you can see what the market is wanting. The reason why that they're still on there and they're commanding that price is because they know what the market wants. So that's a great idea. Now, is there anything else, like, because I know reviews are a big deal. So if you get like 1 stars, then people aren't going to want to stay there. Is there any tips or anything you could give us with reviews?
Communication. That's an easy one. It's a very low effort, low cost thing to do. It just takes some time, but you can automate some of it. And so that is what I've learned has been very helpful in getting good reviews, is just someone requests to book, you respond quickly, right? So within an hour would be ideal. I get a little notification, like a text. And if I'm not doing something, I just go in, I like check their profile, check the message, see just like what the scenario is, to see if it's like a weird scenario. I have my settings to where it's like it's a 3-night minimum to avoid the 1-night parties, because I have a large house. So it's like, it'd be ideal for a party. So I try to like avoid that. If you have a 2-bedroom condo, I wouldn't be as concerned, like, at all. So I go in there and I respond right away. I say, hey, Jeff, like, I'm excited for your wedding. It sounds like a great time, because they'll give you some kind of, there's wine country is right down the road. We got shopping nearby. It'll be ready for you. Let me know if you have any questions. And just like I'm here to help. Like, this is your time. This is their vacation, or it's their wedding, or their graduation for someone. So their family thing. Someone's having a baby. Someone's having a concert. Like, you just don't know why they're here. So communicate with them. Make sure your pictures are an accurate depiction of your listing, because either way you have it, it's just not. It's as long as your pictures match your actual place, it's a net positive. Anything other than that, whether the pictures look way better and you get there and you're like, oh my God, this place is much worse. Or the inverse of like, these pictures are okay. And you get there, oh my God, this place is amazing. Well, you're losing out on clicks if it's that way. And then you're getting bad reviews if it's the other way. So it's like, just be accurate as best you can. And yeah. And then the small things. So, I mean, like when I say don't have the $13 coffee maker, have the $35 one. Don't get the $28 silverware set, get the $40 one. Like people notice that because when you go stay in an Airbnb, and if you haven't, go stay in one, right, on your next trip versus a hotel or whatever you're doing, and just feel around, just like look around as if this is your place, and like, hey, like this is from IKEA, like this is everything's from a Target down the street, and it's like very just here's a table, here's this amenity, check versus this is comfortable to stay in, and the effort level to go from like, yeah, I technically there's a bed there versus like, no, it's a nice bed is not that much difference. So I would say great. Do that.
Awesome, Mike. Man, you give us lots of great advice. Hopefully people are starting to realize that Airbnb, you're going to make a lot more money if you put things as short-term, but buy and hold, yes. Making sure that you're holding it for long-term, giving it to your children as generational wealth is another huge blessing on top of that. Now, where can people find you? Because they definitely need to check out all your TikTok and Instagram, all that fun stuff. But I want them to be able to find you online. So before we sign off, where can they find you?
Yeah, so main account is going to be on Instagram. It's Mortgage Mike, and there's 2 underscores in between the words mortgage and Mike. Fair warning, it's not a lot of mortgage content on there or real estate content. It's a good time there, but it's all like dating, divorce, single dad, humor, skits, all that.
It's funny. I follow it too.
It's yeah. So then on TikTok, same thing, mortgage underscore Mike. And yeah, so that's where they can currently find me to chit chat.
Cool, man. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate all your insights and hope everything continues to go well with everything that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Same for you. Thanks for having me. I love talking real estate. I don't get to do it too often. So it's just the circle you're in or not in. And I love getting back into it.
Awesome, buddy. You take care.
Thanks. You too.